Okay, let's go over how to select your movements. What is your hierarchy? What is the list of movements you do on a weekly basis to produce a world-class athlete? It can be extremely confusing to a beginner. So this video is going to be good for beginners, parents, coaches just starting out, trying to help your athletes, help your children excel in their sport, excel in wrestling. The human body can be confusing considering all of its articulations. You can move your pinky toe by itself. Should you do pinky toe exercises? You know, that's extreme. It's silly on purpose, but that just highlights the complexity of the human body and why uh, some programs are better than others. Okay, because if you learn through, like I have, through education, through training, through trial and error, 20 plus years of hit or miss, and seeing the body progress and adapt to certain trainings, uh, you get a strong sense of no, don't do that, do this. That's a decent movement. That's okay. But for a wrestler, your time is well more spent over here. Let's work on this. Or as a tennis player, let's put a little more emphasis on footwork, agility, and less emphasis on your max deadlift, for example. And you can go on and on forever. All right, one of the things I want to give you with this video is the ability to take information and categorize it. Put it somewhere useful in your file system in your brain that you can use for later. So for example, a friend sent me a Kyle Dake video, a YouTube short, and it had rotational plyometrics in it, and along with a bunch of highlights of these types of movements, which I would assume is just a fraction of what he actually does, his training of all the different movements he trains with. He said, I no longer do traditional classic strength movements. And I assume he's talking about squat, bench, deadlift with a barbell, okay? And or your bodybuilding movements, arm day, chest day, back day. Doesn't train like that. Okay. However, what I want to warn anybody is taking a statement like that and then looking at a edited video and saying, okay, cool, world class champion, Olympian doesn't do deadlift, back squat, bench press, so I'm never going to do that again either. All right, don't make these assumptions. Complete your education. Find out exactly what a wrestler needs, what a human body needs to perform at its best. Okay, so for example, an error in that statement, and this could be completely taking him out of context because I'm not gonna dig into all of his videos and and find out exactly what he's done through his entire life. I'm not gonna do that. It would take forever. But I don't want you to do the same thing either. Don't take it out of context. All right. An athlete, a wrestler needs strength. A wrestler needs world-class strength. And you need to be able to demonstrate your strength in fundamental ways. And fundamental ways are the basic universal motor recruitment patterns that a human body does. Like a human body squats, pushes and pulls, hip hinges. Whether you're doing a deadlift like motion or a sit up, you're hip hinging, okay, lifting. Okay, and those that I just mentioned are the basics. Everything else is a variation of those things: squatting, triple flexion, triple extension at the ankle, knee, and hip. Okay. And then domination of the hip hinge, like a deadlift or sit up, almost like an isolation. You have all kinds of those movements, okay, that you need to train and worry about. And also pushing and pulling with the upper body. In which manner should we do this? Okay, and that's what I'm going to go over. I'm gonna show you. I'm gonna do an outline step by step. We're gonna go through this. It'll be worth your time, so stick with me. First, I want to show you this and show you the non-traditional, non-typical movements that some of these were in that YouTube short. Classic move here, just running, sprinting. Okay, here, just a rotational movement with a push. Rotational movement with a throw, a toss. This is a combinational. It can be confusing. Where do I categorize a movement like this? After we go through the outline, you'll be able to do it. You'll be able to break it down. Okay, he's stabilizing with the core through this, so you could call this a dynamic plank-like movement. It's the goal of a plank is to challenge the core into stabilizing a straight spine. Okay, and then he's pulling with the biceps, he's pulling with the lats, he's slamming that ball down. That's a variation of a pull. Okay, like a pull up. Okay, he's slamming those elbows down to the ribs. He's pulling hard with the bicep. It's a pull. Okay, so there's dynamic footwork here, rotational demands on the core while he's trying to keep the core balanced and in good posture. Okay, so watch this one again. This is a good one because it's like, where do I put this? Simply, you just put this in your core training slot. All right, I wouldn't put this in a push-pull squat or a spot or a leg spot. Like this would just be core training here. You get some grip work out of it too. All right, this is a plyometric. It's a toss. Okay, this can be put in the same slot as your Olympic lifts, your cleans, your snatches. Okay, and you can do Olympic lifts in any variation that your mind can come up with, any creation. All right, he's gonna explode with the hips. He's gonna toss this over the shoulder. The same mechanics, more or less, are in the clean and the snatch. Okay, so foundationally, as a wrestler, outside of the wrestling room, in the weight room, I would have you master the clean and the snatch. Master how to generate mechanical advantage with all of the joints in your body with the goal of lifting something overhead as fast and as powerful as you can. That's all an Olympic lift is. Okay? The full body coordination here. And that's what seems to dominate his training now is full body explosive movements, much like Olympic lifts. And then he adds a twist in there, literally a rotational type movement. He adds rotation to it, okay, which is something that can be done purposefully in your strength and conditioning if, and it should be. However, if your wrestling practice, and I've seen some pretty intense wrestling practices where they're just flinging bodies and getting plenty of reps in, picking up your own training partner and tossing him. It's like throw day. If you get plenty of reps on throw day, tossing your own buddy, then you don't need to pull out the dummy and do it. But if you never get any practice throwing your own buddy, then you got to get the dummy out and do it. Okay, so and this is just a pull with a static hold in it. All right. Are they necessary? Should you spend a lot of time on static holds? I think there's an argument for it. I personally don't I don't stress it that heavily in training. I stress heavy lifting, strict pull-ups, putting weight on a belt, squeezing, maybe getting a good stop at the top and coming back down, controlling it, and also doing pull-ups in a more explosive manner like you would see in CrossFit, a hip-driven pull-up where you're snapping, just like you would do a snap down or an arm drag. Okay? People look at a kipping pull-up and they're like, it looks a little goofy to me. I don't know if that has any purpose. It has tremendous purpose for wrestlers. Okay? Because all of your pulls should be hip-driven. Okay? You shouldn't do an isolated pull if you can help it. If you do an arm drag, you use your hips, you use your core on that arm drag. All right. If you do a snap down, you use your hips, use your core to snap them down. All right. These are it's just a form of a pull, and it's just another variation. We'll do like 30 more seconds of this. Some more static work here. So this is static work on the rotator cuff. Okay, maybe he had a weakness in his rotator cuff. Do you need to do everything in the kitchen sink like this? Not if your routine is complete. Okay, if your full body movements constantly take your shoulders overhead, and you're constantly pushing and pulling, and you're doing all the Olympic lift work, and you're wrestling all the time, this is not necessary. But if you develop an injury or some type of weakness in the shoulder, this would be a consideration for sure. And it doesn't hurt to do it. If you got the time, you want to add this in there, it's not going to take away from you. Okay. I personally have not done a whole lot of rotator cuff work throughout my career. And this is anecdotal, I know, but I still have world-class strength and performance results, competitive performance results with good shoulder health. Okay. And it's because I balance the pushing and pulling. If you push, you're hitting the front side of the shoulder, including the rotator cuff. And if you're always pulling, you're balancing it. Dumbbell rows, pull-ups, even in your cleans and snatches, you're pulling with the shoulder. Even with deadlifts, you should be pulling it into you, keeping it close to the body. There's a little bit of pull there. There's all kinds of shoulder work going on and other movements that will train your rotator cuff, so you don't have to isolate the rotator cuff. Okay? If your training is thorough, your full body movements, your selections are thorough, isolations are completely unnecessary. Okay, but if you develop a glaring weakness or some type of injury, then you might want to throw an isolation in there, and that dips into the category of therapy. Okay, that's where I put isolations. They're more physical therapy and or aesthetics than they are performance enhancing for world-class athletes. Okay, for example, calf raises. If you're doing Olympic lifts, back squats, front squats, overhead squats, box jumps, jump rope, running, and on, your calves are blown apart. They're trained to the max. Throwing calf raises in there is most likely just going to overtrain them. It's going to be unnecessary. It's going to take away from tomorrow's work where you're going to need your calves again. Okay, so isolation is not a big fan of. Like if your hammies need more work, all right, and you don't think your hammies got enough work, do more deadlifts. Do more power cleans, do more snatches, do something that has a lot of ROI, a lot of bang for his buck. And that's where I seem to agree with Kyle Dake here with his training. Looked like he was doing some Gracie breathing techniques there. All right, this is more rotator shoulder cuff work, more core stabilization. Now this is just, don't ever mystify something. This is just more odd object strength training. All right, challenging yourself in a different way, but it doesn't mean it trumps something traditional, something classic. Okay, he's doing a shoulder raise. All right, he's also hinging at the hips. Okay, like a deadlift. All right, so if you're doing clean and jerks, if you're doing snatches, if you're doing a lot of pushing and pulling with your shoulders, it's like your shoulders and your hips are taken care of. Don't feel like, oh, this is the secret bullet that I've been missing. This'll take me over the edge. It's not going to do that. And matter of fact, it could possibly, depending how you program it in, if you throw these in instead of cleans are way more important than these. All right? Especially heavy cleans. Back on the clean subject, this is explosive plyometric using the entire body, getting a triple extension, triple flexion out of the legs, getting some hip pop into it, getting some intense core work into it. It's rotational. Okay. Does it substitute? Once again, does it substitute classic lifts? Clean snatch? Absolutely not. No matter how intense you get with this med ball and how heavy you get with it, it's not going to make you near as strong or formidable as somebody who can clean and jerk 350 pounds. And 350 is that's a universal number. Like if you're 180 pounds or heavier, then your lifetime goals should be 350. Okay, and if you can do 350 on a clean and jerk, it's going to transfer everywhere. Okay, you can come back and pick up one of these med balls and throw a heavier med ball than anybody in the room that cannot do a 350 clean and jerk. It will transfer in that direction. Okay, now say somebody's been working purely on this plyometric, no clean and jerks, it won't transfer the other way. Okay, he can work himself up to a 100-pound med ball on this, 200-pound med ball. He's still not going to be able to clean and jerk a 350-pound barbell. Okay, and the universal motor recruitment patterns in a clean and jerk transfer to all sports. Okay, that's why it's such a popular movement. It's not popular by myth or by tradition. It's popular because of the biomechanics contained in a clean and jerk. The triple extension explosion at the ankles, knees, and hips. The change of direction, which is agility. Changing direction, even if you're in place, is still agility. Some people don't understand that. It's not just cone work like a running back. When you go up and then come back down, that's agility. And wrestlers need that. Okay, changing levels dynamically, smoothly, without a hiccup increases the success of a wrestler. And doing it with a heavy load. So you go down and catch the barbell in a full squat and then pop right back out of the hole. That's like shooting in and picking somebody up with a double leg. And if you can do that flawlessly with 350-pound barbell, doing it to a human is going to be child's play. Okay. I like this med ball throw. I'd throw it in there for conditioning. I would not substitute it for power training, max power training, or max strength. Would not substitute the ball for that. Okay, this is being a separate session, separate category than my max power training, max strength training. Okay, so let's move on. I think I beat this horse to death. I want to go over an outline. Okay. Motor recruitment patterns. What are the basics? Okay, what are the derivatives, if that's the right word? What do all movements boil down to? Okay, all leg movements, running, jumping, any leg, full body leg based movement he was doing there, including that med ball toss, is a you could say has elements of a squat in it. Okay? Because what is a squat? It's a flexion of the ankle, knee, and hip. All right, you got to flex your ankle, knee, and hip to run. Okay, and it's also extension. Like I've said many times, the triple extension, extend the ankle, knee, and hip. Okay, what does that to the extreme? At a full range of motion, what movement flexes the ankle, knee, and hip and extends the ankle, knee, and hip? The squat. Okay, so at the base of every leg movement you do, whether it's a lunge, run, jump, twisting, jumping movement, bounding movement, whatever, there's flexion, extension of the ankle, knee, and hip. That at the base of that is your squat. So if you want, here's the key. If you want to be good at a myriad of leg movements, there's one movement out there that you could master, get really strong at it, build great endurance with it, great power with it, and that movement would allow transference to all these other unknown movements that you might do in the future. Okay, those are the movements we're after. Those are the movements we want to train all the time. Okay, that's the squat. So if I get good at squats, if I can do a 450-pound squat, how hard is it for me to hop on a box? It's not going to be that hard because a box jump is my own body weight. So extending my ankles, knees, and hips rapidly enough to propel my own body weight onto a box is going to be simple after I've built my squat to a 450-pound back squat. I'm 200 pounds, 210. Okay? It's going to train. It's going to make you a good mover. That's something I want you guys to understand is how to become a good mover. Because when we train these squats, we want to attack these movements like a professional bowler, a professional dart thrower, a professional shooter with precision and accuracy. I want my knees in a precise position, my ankles, my heels, my toes. I want everything in a precise position to maximize efficiency. Our joints move according to the torque equation. They're rotational. Okay? Depending on where we place the implement that we're moving will cause us to maximize torque or bleed torque. Like a deadlift. If I let the barbell roll away from my joints, I'm bleeding torque. So I want to keep the deadlift bar as close to the shins, knees, hips as possible as we can. Okay? This requires a long path of mastery. All right, and if you master these biomechanics and become a good squatter, a good mover of all these biomechanics, pushing, pulling, squatting, then it's going to transfer to all your wrestling movements. Your wrestling stance will get better. Your shot will get better. Okay, your lifting of a human body will get better. All right, building your base will get better. Everything will improve. Okay, so you got your squat, you got your back, front, and overhead squat. Master those. All three of them are super important. I'm not going to go too far into that. I would extend this lecture much longer. Okay. Then you have your hip hinging. Is that an E? I just totally went blank on that word. Where's my spell check? Hip hinge. Must be wrong. That's an I. Okay. You got your posterior chain hip hinge. Okay, your deadlift. Clean. Snatch movements. Right? Those are your fundamentals. You got to be hitting some form of that. And the deadlift is crucial. There's a lot of trolling and argument about the deadlift. And I'm just going to put this out here. Your posterior chain, your back, will not ever be as strong as it can be if you don't deadlift. Okay? It's simple logic, simple math. You can do the heaviest barbell with the deadlift. All right, you can do some funky math with the clean and the power equation and say, well, you're moving more weight per second on a clean than you are with a deadlift. It still doesn't add up. And I've never seen it work that way. Somebody may be able to prove me wrong, but you can work the clean. This is true more than your deadlift and still have a strong deadlift. But those who specialize in the deadlift, they're going to have an over 1,000-pound deadlift, and no one's going to be close. And there's only one way they got there, and that was practicing the deadlift. Okay, can you build posterior chain strength? Posterior chain is all your muscles on your back side of the human body, from your calves up to your traps. Okay. Can you build entry level posterior chain strength without a deadlift? Absolutely, you can. And that goes back to Kyle Dake. I'm not saying Kyle Dake is weak. He is absolutely strong enough for the sport of wrestling. Every sport has its entry level requirement for strength. That's what's cool about wrestling and cool about CrossFit. Just about any sport besides strongman and powerlifting and Olympic lifting is you don't have to be the strongest in the sport to be successful at it. All right. Obviously, you do in powerlifting, Olympic lifting, and strongman. But in wrestling, you don't have to be the strongest. You just have to be strong enough. So my warning, don't get me wrong on this. My warning is if you don't do deadlift, bench, back squat, the slow lifts, the traditional slow lifts, you will not be as strong as you could be. And pure maximal strength lifting, like a strongman, power lifter, Olympic lifter, you will not be that as strong as you could be. And I know I can hear people saying, well, wrestling's a different strength. It's not. It's not. The Olympic lifts, the power lifts, the strongman events is how you measure strength. You can't measure strength within the sport of wrestling. Yeah, you can. Whoever beats who is stronger. No, that doesn't work. He could have been more skilled. He could have had a bigger engine. He could have been more ferocious. Okay. Strength is a measurement of contractile forces and biomechanical precision skill. Okay. If you can move a deadlift bar with more weight than somebody else, you're stronger than that person. All right. If you beat somebody in wrestling, we don't know. What exactly was the reason you won? All right. let's move on. So we got squat, we got hip hinge, and I'm gonna hopefully I want to give you this outline so you can prioritize, and we can see how other movements are variations of these movements. Okay, now you got your push. All right, these are all your presses. All right, bench press, shoulder press. Okay, and your jerk movements. These are your power movements / plyometric movements. All right, plyos. Bench press, shoulder press. So you got two angles you need to cover. If you cover these two angles, pushing straight forward, horizontal, that's what we call it, to the body, and pushing vertical. All right, you can throw other variations in there whenever you feel like it, but you want to cover these bases. So I am very traditional here, I suppose, because I put a lot of value on the bench press. I want to be super strong here. I built myself up to a 400-pound bench press, not to win a powerlifting comp, just to be a strong football player, a strong wrestler, strong mixed martial artist. Get that push up as high as I can. Okay. Coincidentally, right? People didn't like getting punched by me. All right. And nobody could stop me from building a base. And if I wanted to pummel in on you, I could jam my uppercut in there, my underhook and wrestling pretty easily. Could force my way through situations, due to the abundance of strength, rather than always having to rely on better positioning. I could kind of use a cheat code, right? Which is nice if you got it. So pushing, get strong on that. All right. You saw in his video, he's tossing balls. He's the old chest pass with the medicine ball. Those are great. They do not take the place of bench press. Plyos are in a different category. You can train both in there. For example, a typical workout that has a pushing theme to it that I've done over and over again is I'll go heavy on bench press. Okay, I'll do like a 5-3-1, heavy set of 5, heavy set of 3, and then go for a heavy 1 for the day, which may or may not be a true max, but it's usually 90% or heavier. All right, that's a typical favorite, or 5-5-5 or 3-3-3 with some good build-up sets in there. Okay, that's not just only 3 sets of bench. And then as accessories, in bodybuilding fashion, as accessories, I'll throw plyometric push-ups into a Metcon, a conditioner, metabolic conditioner. One that we like doing is 5, what would it be? 5 chest to bar pull-ups, about 7 plyometric push-ups off of plates, actually called depth push-ups, and then 12 squat jumps on and off the plates. Get the good leg burn in there and get the lungs going. So you're hitting your plyometrics, getting the cardio in there, and other movements all in one shot with that conditioner, combined with the bench press you did earlier. Now you're pushing strength and endurance and speed and power are all taken care of. Okay. Then you got your pull. Okay, this is the reverse of pushing. I want to pull horizontally, dumbbell rows, barbell rows. All right, and I want to pull vertically, rope climbs, pull-ups, muscle-ups. Okay, so pull-ups, dumbbell rows, barbell rows, rope climbs, and big fan of muscle-ups. That's got push and pull combo. All right, so when you see that, combo is an important word, because when you see these mystifying moves, oh, look at this new way that this guy is training. Look at all the cool moves he's doing. It's like, now you'll be able to analyze it and break it down. He's like, well, where does that move actually fall? Where does it fall? Where do calf raises fall? Calf raise is just a slow strength move that shows up when you run, when you jump. You know, half a calf raise shows up when you're squatting, when doing squatting motions. Okay, so if you're doing a lot of these other movements that involve the calves, you don't need that calf raise. All right, if you're doing a lot of fundamental moves like this, pull-ups, dumbbell rows, barbell rows, rope climbs, muscle-ups, then maybe you don't have room for this fancy tornado ball move that has a pull in it. Sometimes we've been doing so much pushing and pulling and toe to bars and sit-ups that we don't have any, for example, we don't have any room for the ski erg, because the ski erg has a pull, then it has a push. When you kick those triceps out, it's got a push there. Okay, so it hits the bis and tris, and then it hits the abs. Okay, if we've been hitting other moves that contain those universal motor recruitment patterns, then we're not going to do a ski erg today. It's not going to fit in. Okay, so this is and up here we're gonna put like toe to bar. Toe to bar, sit-ups. Love GHD sit-ups. All right, I've been training since I was 13, which was back in '96, and CrossFit became popular around 2007. So when I started competing in CrossFit in 2012, so it was quite developed by the time I actually jumped into that sport. And what I pleasantly found was that the founder of CrossFit, Greg Glassman, and myself were on the same page, because his philosophy was the same as mine. I'm going to find guys, practitioners, athletes that are best at what they do, and I'm going to steal from them. I'm going to take from them. Who's the strongest in the world? Period. Max strength. Your power lifters, limb lifters, strongmen. So I'm going to take their training protocols, integrate them into my training. I need to be freaky strong. Not as strong as them, but I need to be freaky strong. All right, who has the best endurance in the world? Who has the best lungs? Okay, your cross-country runners, your swimmers, your bikers, they have the best aerobic systems. Okay, and so on and so forth. Okay, so I had my training paradigm in place prior to 2012. Like I said, I've been training since '96, and I had all these hierarchy of movements that I was toying around with, and then CrossFit comes along and helps me refine it even more. I owe a lot to CrossFit, and definitely heavily influenced by it. So this list, a lot of these movements I didn't do on a regular basis until I had to be good at the sport of CrossFit, which actually ended up being a benefit. Like overhead squat was never taught that growing up. When I was forced to do it, because they kept coming up in competitions, and the squat snatch and overhead squats, then I was forced to also experiment with it and see its utility. Okay, and feel its utility. And then I realized, like, I should have been doing that my whole life. Okay, same with front squats, because back squats is clearly the most popular, but these have important utility. They need to be done also. Okay, so, and same with the rest of these movements. These are just priorities. If you leave these out, it's got to be for a really good reason, a really good substitution. Okay, so, but if you put all these in and train these in a thorough manner with good programming, you'll be a world-class athlete. You will have no weaknesses. So that's it in a nutshell. I think I have it all covered here. How do we analyze Kyle Dake's movements? Okay, how do we analyze his movements? All you do is you pick it apart. What's he doing with his legs? He's doing a little bit of flexion and extension with his legs. He's adding rotational footwork in there. Okay, when else do you do rotational footwork? How about the entirety of your wrestling practice? Okay, so is rotational footwork a priority in the strength and conditioning gym? I would say no, because you just did 2 hours of rotational footwork in wrestling. Okay, what is a priority in the strength and conditioning gym is things that you need that you don't do effectively in a wrestling room. Do you effectively train max strength in a wrestling room? No, because of one criteria, you can't measure what you're doing in a wrestling room when it comes to strength. How much did you lift? How many reps did you do it? How do you know you're getting stronger if you're only doing wrestling? You don't know. It's just a wild guess. It's a feel, right? But if your deadlift went from 200 pounds to 550 pounds, like mine, then you know you got stronger. And it transfers. Okay, for example, I walked on to an MMA team in New Jersey. It's one of the highlights of my life that I get a lot of war stories from. And one of their professional fighters, one of their experienced fighters, put me in a triangle choke. Okay, and like a noob, because I was new to this MMA sport, I got caught. I was pretty deep in that thing and getting a little fuzzy. So what did I do? I got my hips under him, got some good posture, and I just deadlifted him up in the air. And once I got him up overhead, he squealed a little bit and let go and said, whoa, 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 because he didn't want to be power bombed. Okay. If my deadlift was still 200 pounds, I wouldn't have been able to do it. All right. So, and you got to remember that's a combination of being a good mover and being contractilely strong. Okay, because what I want to emphasize too is when you master these moves, like I said earlier about the back squat, make sure your knees in a precise position, toes in a precise position, your core is in a precise position. You're very accurate with your movements, with the placement of your joints, of your skeleton. Okay, to create better torque, to create better mechanical advantage. And as basic as mundane as some of these movements are, they can be continually refined forever, and you should do that, just like a dart thrower. When you first start darts, it'll look like you can throw, but you're not hitting anything. Because you need to throw that thing about 1 billion times, and then not only does it look like you can throw it, you're hitting that bullseye. It's the same thing with any other movement. And that's what separates the average wrestlers from the champions. And we're talking about millimeters of precision. Okay, that can only be achieved through purposeful training of these motor recruitment patterns that show up across the board, that transfer. All right, your back squat mechanics will transfer to your shot, for example. Okay, your bench press will transfer to you pressing yourself off the mat or pummeling into him. All right, so this, to recap, love Kyle Dake's movements. Okay. I think, for example, movements like that one that he just put in there have utility. They have purpose. Okay. Do they take priority over your fundamental motor recruitment patterns, the base? All right, because what was in there? Break it down step by step, frame by frame. Where in this little thumbnail right here? It's a lunge. He's got a lunge. He's lunging out of that rotational position. What's a lunge? It's a flexion of the ankle, knee, and hip. What's a flexion of the ankle, knee, and hip? A squat. Okay, so don't feel like you have not been training adequately because you're not doing some different combinational move that this other guy's doing. He just took the moves that you've been doing, squatting, hip hinging, pushing and pulling, and he made a combo out of it and threw a rotation in there. All right. Is that applicable to wrestling? Absolutely. Okay. Just don't make the mistake of thinking you're going to be the strongest you could be, like he said in his YouTube thumbnail, the strongest you could be without these heavy lifts, these heavy slow lifts, deadlift, back squat, bench press. You just won't. Okay. Are you trying to be the strongest in wrestling? No, you're trying to be strong enough. Okay. And my philosophy is, with the time that I have, the energy that I have for that session, for that task, I'm going to do my best. I'm going to maximize it. So if I'm working on strength at that moment, I'm trying to get the strongest I can be. That also means smart movement selection. What is the best way to get the strongest I can be? And one way to do that, like I said before, is look up the strongest in the world. See how they achieve this. Implement their protocols. Okay, where it changes for you as a wrestler, or as a basketball player, football player, is it's not your sport. You still need to be as strong as you can be, but it can't cut into the time you are training for your sport. Okay, it can't cut into wrestling practice. And that's an important detail, because people are like, well, if you're dedicated, blah blah blah, then you'll make time. It's like you've only got 24 hours in a day, and you only have so much soft tissue that can take a certain amount of beating. Okay, if you beat it up in wrestling practice, you can't take the same amount of beating in your weightlifting that a power lifter can, because a power lifter didn't do wrestling practice. So you have to divide up the total volume, I'll stick with this word, the total volume of beatings your soft tissues can take from your training. You got to split that between wrestling and your strength and conditioning. A power lifter doesn't have to. An Olympic lifter doesn't have to. A strongman doesn't have to. Okay, so keep that in mind. If you want more information, go to my website at champions-path.ghost.io. It's a mouthful. I'll put that in the comments. That's where I'm posting blogs, articles, where you can get more clarification on this. And don't be afraid to reach out to me if you got a question.